Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about TimeSplitters Future Perfect, which was developed by Free Radical Design, published by EA Games, and was released in 2005 on the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox.
But first, if you could give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, TimeSplitters Future Perfect, and by extension, all of the TimeSplitters games that ever were, are first-person shooter games. And they were among the crop of, first-person shooters on consoles that became popular as sort of pseudo-party games that started in the 90s with games like Goldeneye, obviously. But as it went on to the next generation of consoles, I feel like the field really exploded and the overall quality of the majority of them went down pretty drastically. I don't know if you have any experience with this at all.
Not really. I never even played Goldeneye. The only thing I really have any similar experience to at all is the multiplayer shooter thing in Donkey Kong 64.
I somehow knew that was what you were
was
going
also
to say.
made by Rare, though, so...
True.
Playing some of the map design, I thought in the multiplayer felt a little bit like that, but it's probably because it was kind of like GoldenEye and Donkey Kong. But I only ever played TimeSplitters at Dan's house as a kid, so I have very, very limited exposure experience to this game specifically, and less to this kind of genre of party shooter.
Yeah, and I should mention, I would say that the debate over which TimeSplitters game, if you're going to cover a TimeSplitters game, first of all, there's a tertiary debate that happens prior to that, which is, do you cover a TimeSplitters game? And the scales heavily weigh no on that for most people. But when you're looking at the trilogy, as it were, TimeSplitters, TimeSplitters 2, and then Future Perfect, this is the third game in the series, which makes it the most updated and the most mechanically clean. But to me, if I was the one making the decision, I feel like TimeSplitters 1 would have been the more interesting thing. But we can kind of lump a lot of that conversation into this as well. So I think this pans out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But
also, this game was requested, so...
Yes, it was very specifically requested, and we weren't going to say no about it, so... Yeah, I was going to say some experience that's kind of underselling it. I played a shitload of these games when I was a kid, to the point where I can even make the comparison I opened this episode with.
Mm-hmm.
I did play all three of the TimeSplitters games. I probably put the actual most time into TimeSplitters 2, which I had on the GameCube. But my experience does go as far back as GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which I will make a more nuanced comparison to when we get to talking about the multiplayer in this game. But those games, it does feel very similar in the same vein. And it's really hard to separate all of these games, and therefore the whole sort of genre has this nostalgic aura around it for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people.
It feels very of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. The console first-person shooter it embodies a certain quality that, and I don't mean high quality, I just mean quality of game, where there's sort of a wackiness to the multiplayer and a general control scheme and stuff. Things that, were introduced in GoldenEye and have stayed as part of the genre up until today, but still, just a sense of how it plays. I don't know. We'll get into mechanics, and I'll discuss this more at length. But yeah, it's a fun time. It's been a fun time for a while, and going back to it does make you really appreciate the strides that we've made. But yeah, let's get into, because we don't have much to talk about as far as history goes, because I'm the only one with a big history here. Let's jump into like exploring the mechanics, because that's pretty obviously what this game is mostly, like, its entirety. But what we did to prepare for this podcast was play through the entirety of the campaign, and then also played multiplayer. I did one of the challenges, even though I know that that's kind of like a big through line for the series.
Challenge everything.
EA games. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time with it.
Yeah, I did not even look at them.
Yep. So how did you enjoy playing a PlayStation 2 era first person shooter campaign?
I liked it all right. It was really, the thing that stood out to me first and foremost was like the tone of the game. But we'll talk about that later. Mechanically, like because I didn't play shooters growing up, I keep being surprised when I come to like an older shooter and it controls exactly how I expect it to. It just seems like those controls have been set in stone longer than I think they have. And also, I thought this game was older than it is. Like, I was surprised to see that it came out in 2005. I probably would have guessed like 1999 or 2000.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought that like the aim assist was pretty huge, or like very lenient or whatever. That helped a lot. Once I had to go into, and you gave me the tip of like what to set the sensitivity to.
Yeah.
That made it a lot easier, because like just default it felt like way too hard to aim. But like once I'd made those couple of adjustments that we figured out, we workshopped. I thought it was actually like pretty like brisk and fun. It kind of has this like cinematic quality. Like the levels are very much feel like they're about telling a little story. So I enjoyed that. I liked the variety of levels and stuff.
Yeah. I do want to just to mention, just to get this out of the way up top. I do not know how much nostalgia has clouded my vision, because my belief is that the third-party, now many years old controllers that we were using with the PlayStation 2 were more at fault than the game. But we set the sensitivity of what they call turn speed, because we didn't have terms really mapped out in 2005, or at least I guess Free Radicals didn't. To 0, to not 0.0 nothing the sensitivity. And the reason for that is because the game basically does not allow you to make fine aiming adjustments. By the time that you've moved the control stick in a way that it's registering as being moved, it just like flies off the side of the screen like instantaneously. And it's really difficult to play a shooter when you have to do wide sweeping movements. Like, it would be different in other first person games where this would be fine, like if you had melee combat or something. But because it is a shooter, and because there's like a weird number of levels in this game that ask you to snipe things, it is just impossible to aim without turning the sensitivity way down, and the default is super high. But yeah, that is a thing. So, yeah, grain of salt, that could be our controllers. Yeah. And that might not be the game. So don't take that as, like, a general criticism. But to talk about the actual, like, levels, I think that one of the key selling points of the TimeSplitters franchise, because it is a game about traveling through time, there is a huge variety, and they don't do it in what I've been calling the, like, Super Nintendo way of
lava level,
ice level, go to space, yeah, that kind of shit. Yeah. Which, I mean, I love that, and like if you pull that off in like a way that is cute, I do enjoy that.
It worked when games were more abstract.
But now it feels like kind of hokey, and like, I called it out when fucking Mario Odyssey did it. I was like, Oh yeah, you get the dinosaur level, you get the lava level, you get the ice
Yeah,
level.
I guess 3D platformers do feel like they're kind of an exception.
That's true. They do feel like a relic of a bygone era.
Yeah, like it makes more sense to like be platforming in like a lava area with like molten, like cooled rock platforms.
It gives like a good
video-
excuse as to why you die when you fall.
Yeah, etc., etc.
But yeah, so this game ends up being, because it is like you are and God, no, I do not remember before you ask the plot of TimeSplitters or TimeSplitters 2. I know that Cortez is who's the main character in this game. I think is in TimeSplitters 2 as the main character, but I don't know if he comes from the first game or not.
Yeah, just out of sheer curiosity, I looked up reviews of this, and there were a surprising number of recent reviews, I thought, but I didn't watch any of those. I found the IGN review from 10 years ago.
Good.
And they said that in the first two games, I don't know if it was Cortez or not, but like a person from whatever organization you're a part of is sent to each time period and occupies a body of somebody in that. So you're playing a
Right.
different character in each level.
Yeah, that sounds correct from my little memory of TimeSplitters 2. Yeah, but it does. It affords a level of creativity to everything, and the game smartly gets out of the past very quickly. There's like one level in World War one level in the 60s, and then one in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then you jump from there into the future.
Like 2054 or something like that.
Yeah, because there's like in like the fictional history of this game, history was normal up until 2005, and then there's like a robot war at some point, and then the TimeSplitters war, which is what you're taking part in now. And so you go through basically leading up into present day. And then I think the last level is actually like a weird, you kind of jump forward then back again. Like you never go into the future from the main plot's setting.
Right.
So you do a couple of levels that are just like World War One level, just look straight out of Call of Duty, except you're in a castle, so it's cooler.
Yeah.
And then the level in the 60s is like very bland. I think it's my least favorite level in the entire
except
game.
for the second part of it, which is on a train.
Yeah, the train one is cool. And then the 90s one is probably the best level in the game, where you're in a haunted mansion. 'Cause, yeah. And then...
Haunted Mansion scream 90s.
They really do. They did manage to capture the 90s in a way I was kind of surprised by.
I feel like it only really came across in the one character with the slut t-shirt.
Yeah, Jo Beth Casey. That's it. That's her name. Yeah, but it has that sort of like very schlocky 90s horror vibe to it.
I kind of associate that more with the 80s, but you're more of the horror buff, so I won't question you.
I mean, I'm imagining like John Carpenter in his heyday. So
Sure.
that's like 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Regardless, it goes through those, and it's interesting because, like an episode of Doctor Who, if it's set in the past, I don't give a shit about it. And if it's set in the future, then it's really cool, and they get to do a lot of character design that's nice.
Chad, known hater of history.
I do. I know you're not a Doctor Who watcher.
No, I'm not.
But if you watch episodes of Doctor Who, you wouldn't be able to map it on here because basically every past set episode is like, we go to the past just for kicks. Oh no, look, it's fucking Da Vinci or something. And there's just like one historical figure and they do a real cheeky like origin story for them in a way that is really stupid, and then they leave. And Doctor Who fans probably hate me for that, but
they don't do it as elegantly as Star Trek does.
Yeah. Present or future fiction is better than past fiction because past fiction has a weird hang up with historical figures.
Sure.
And
they don't want to like fuck up the timeline by like killing Da Vinci or something.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like because this game doesn't bring in historical figures, so that criticism doesn't really hold up. But it is just like the first level of the game to really, well, I mean, the first level is like a run through a canyon level, which is fine.
Like the inciting incident level.
It's very much like the opening level to like any first person shooter where they have to put you in some kind of conflict to give you a tutorial before you start the actual time hopping. I kind of forget where I even started with this and where I was going, but it just is a nice variety is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, that's probably my favorite thing about this game. As the loading screens will tell you over and over again, there's 150 characters and there's a lot of weapons.
Yeah.
Like, there's just a nice variety to everything that I really appreciated.
Yeah, and they do...
It's a lot of fun.
Yes. They do a good job of making it fun by introducing sort of like a completely different conceit for each level. And like, some of it's a little bit lazy, sure, but like it's not, none of it is game breaking, and because the core fighting and like objective completion of the game is kind of the same throughout, it never even really has a chance to stumble too hard. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's lowest common denominator, because it is it does go a bit above and beyond like Nightfire, like the bad GoldenEye sequels. But like, it is very sort of, you'd start a level with one gun, even if the level is a direct continuation from a previous level. And then you get more guns as the action escalates, and then there's usually like a boss at the end. And that's it. You move on from there. And so it takes very few risks as far as its gameplay goes. But that does allow it to be very tonally all over the place and like zany.
Yeah, like the gameplay, it feels very like standard or like tried and true. But like the thing about it that I think makes it stand out is it that variety gives it like a toy box feel. And like each new gimmick, it's like you drop everything into a new setting with a new gimmick, and you get to like use all the different like guns and things in like a little bit of a different way. Like this one, like the haunted house has more of a focus on the baseball bat and the flamethrowers, which makes it stand out from the other ones. And the future level with the RoboCop enemies, like 2054 or whatever, the year has the gun that lets you like shoot out the security system, and you get fun little things like that, like a little gimmick in each one. And like it keeps it light and cinematic, and it like I think it makes it work for the most part. Obviously, there's some fumbles, but like it does throw everything at the wall. Yeah. And so as you said, the stumbles don't really get a chance for you to be like to sink in before you're onto a new thing. Yeah.
All of that tone and stuff, like tone, aesthetics, the music, everything about the sort of design of the game, like what's forward facing to the consumer when they pick the game up, is really smart, because none of it aspires to something like above what it's capable of. It's very like, the aesthetics are really like, all the characters are really poofy, like they're big and they have large features like big hands and feet, which makes the animation stand out. And it looks very cartoony, and the tone is really light and campy. And so it takes like it's like a game that, I guess because it came out in 2005, takes the limitations of its medium very, like it feels like it knows them very well.
Yeah, you saw that a lot in games of the time. Like, it actually reminded me a lot of the some of the Tony Hawk games, like Underground or American Wasteland, and the way the characters are modeled. It even reminded me a little bit of like Eternal Darkness or something. Like, it feel like it very much from that time, where like it felt like you wanted to go a little bit more realistic, but you had to go a bit cartoony to make things not look like old GTA box face people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely some contemporaries that this reminded me of.
Well, yeah, and you bring up GTA, which is actually a perfect comparison, because like Grand Theft Auto 3 is a game that did really well and was praised, and like people can still go back to it and enjoy themselves playing the game. But it went for a more realistic look, and because of that, the thing that people call out about it now is the fact that everyone looked fucking stupid.
Yeah. And like, no shade. I don't really like the GTA games. I don't know if I've ever brought that up on the podcast before, so you can send me your hate mail. But I remember thinking they looked bad even back then. Like, they're another game I only ever played at friends' houses, and it's maybe because I played stuff like Kingdom Hearts, or like I tended to only really play games that were like that looked really good on the PS2. Like, there's such a wide variety of visual quality, but like, yeah, like GTA was really ambitious and stuff, so a lot of that's like performance issues and things like that. But
yeah, GTA is always interesting to me graphically, and I only bring it up because I don't feel like we're gonna have that much to say about this game. Is that like Rockstar really showed its roots in that, like, they're the developer of like the original Grand Theft Auto, which is a top-down game, and like Midnight Club Racing. So like when you're playing Grand Theft Auto and you're in a car, it looks totally fine, and then it looks like the Dreamcast character who fucking exploded out of your TV like the girl from The Ring stole your car, because it then gets out of the car in this totally unreal, blocky, weird man and runs around with his arms flailing wildly. And this game avoids that by just having cartoon men, which is way better, aesthetically anyway.
In much smaller linear levels.
Oh, yeah, that was another thing. It's just like, these levels are, okay, we're talking about a campaign, so this seems like a reasonable thing to bring up right now. The level disparity between short levels and long levels was massive. There were like levels in this game that took me 7 minutes to finish, and then levels that took me an hour. And I don't understand at all how they like divided it up. Like, did they just have way too many ideas and just packed them all into one zone, and then we're like, well, this next one you're just gonna go from point A to point B?
I don't know, to me, a lot of them felt pretty comparable in length, except for like at the last few, like the last like 3 felt pretty short.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's just because they were like wanted to have like the last level just be like mostly just the boss, stuff like that. But
well, there's no checkpoint
in
the last level, so if you die to the boss you have to play the opening part again, which seems like a bad choice. Yeah,
but I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not as good at shooters, but like to me they all felt like they were about the same length. It might be like the fact that they're broken up into 2 parts, and maybe some levels seemed more seamlessly put together than others.
Yeah. I will say my biggest complaint about the campaign, well, I have two complaints. They're very similar. The first complaint is that you spend far too much time with Harry Tipper. One, his name is kind of a bad joke. And 2, he is in the worst level in the whole game, which is a very long level that implies that you should be using stealth, but gives you really no way to be stealthy. Like, you can crouch and move, but the enemy placement for the most part is just like always gonna see you no matter what.
Yeah, there's no actual stealth mechanics in the game.
Yeah, it's just walking and shooting. That's what they had down. You can't even jump in this one. And then it puts you in this dumb sniper thing where the health bar that you're trying to protect is a character who isn't on screen and is just a timer. Like, it just goes down whether people are shooting bullets at him or not. And is really long. It's like you have to clear out 2 whole encampments. And, I mean, like, if you execute it perfectly, it probably takes about 90 seconds, like a minute and a half. But you won't execute it perfectly. You will fuck it up. And then my second complaint, which is tied to that, is that the next to last level requires you to snipe invisible enemies, which makes it literally impossible to do. You just have to wait until they throw an attack, hope they miss, and then shoot at them. So if they had just taken the sniping sections out of this game, I would have been like ecstatic.
Yeah, like when I got to that first part in the 60s level, I just like met up with him with Harry Tipper, and I forgot that's what his name was.
Yep.
But and I just started going up this ladder, and he's just like, "All right, I hope you know what you're doing." And I was like, "Oh no!" Like I just cut off some dialogue. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I like didn't know what to do. Like I got the sniper rifle, but had no idea he was like doing a thing over there. So I just proceeded into the house and was fighting guys, and his health bar's going down, and I'm like, "What's happening?" So then I looked it up, like what to do, and saw that you could throw grenades over to where he was sneaking in, and that makes that part so much easier.
Yeah, because you can't hit him because his character model's not even loaded, as far as I know.
I think he shows up a few times, like he's running around.
He pops out of a manhole,
yeah,
and then he goes into a bunker,
right?
And then the enemies come.
But
out.
then he runs to a few other spots.
Yeah, and
then when he's hiding, I think he probably deloads.
Yeah, so you can just throw those grenades pretty much at will.
Yeah.
But I did not know this.
Yeah, it makes it way easier.
Yeah, I just repeated it like 11 times and just had to learn how to shoot people in the head.
Yeah, but no, I totally sympathize because sniping is hard, and I thought that was just a me thing.
No, definitely not. Especially not in this PlayStation 2 era game with the weak-ass analog sticks. But yeah, so Harry Tipper's not a great character. And I would argue most of the characters in this game are not great characters.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to like them. But like I always like a good companion character, and I thought I liked what they added. They add to that like cinematic feel and like give the levels like that kind of sense of a story. Yeah, which I'm into. I like the robot at the end. They bring him back for multiple levels, so the development team must have liked him too. Yeah,
the robot was good. I think that they do a good job of making these characters. Like, I know a lot of, like, I guess I should say I've read a lot of D&D related stuff where people think that they've made a backstory for their character but don't communicate it as well as the characters who are in this game for 10 minutes. Like, there's this, like, implication, like, it's really heavy-handed at the beginning, because that first character, they keep talking about how, like, oh, maybe this guy was a thief before, and then he does really obvious thief stuff, and et cetera, all of this shit about this guy. And I was like, that was kind of weak. Like, I like him on screen. I think he's a charismatic kind of character that I like in a game. But the whole, like, thief backstory came off as, like, a little hokey to me. But then I actually like the fact that Harry Tipper being, like, the stereotypical, like, British secret agent, except he's in the 60s and American.
Austin Powers.
Yeah. Like, it's a good, like, style of thing to spoof because it's easy and, like, the markers are all there. But, like, having the henchmen be like, oh, no, it's Harry Tipper, our mortal enemy, and, like, talk about how dreamy and attractive he is, like, while they're shooting at us is funny. Like, it's actually genuinely funny because he just, like, I don't need to explain, I guess, why that joke is a joke. But yeah, it's good. It makes you think sort of like about the history of this character that you don't actually give a shit about, but like you just have a little notion of what it is.
Yeah, it gives your mind something to chew on.
And the same applies like going forward. JoBeth Casey is pretty like weak as far as like character development goes.
Yeah, the whole joke with her is just that t-shirt.
Yeah, she has a t-shirt that says slut on it. And like I'm not gonna say out loud in public on a podcast that JoBeth Casey may have been like my sexual awakening as a teen. But I will say that there's a weird emphasis between, like a weird dichotomy between how the game treats the character and how the character acts, because, which I guess is the same thing, the writers were just confused. Because Anya, who's your, like, earpiece girl.
Cortana.
Yeah,
basically.
your Cortana, who is apparently observing everything, has all of these jokes about how she is dumb, but the character doesn't seem dumb really at all. Like, she's not written as like a dumb guy, and she just kind of acts how a normal person acts most of the time. Her thing is that she talks about her butt a lot. So, which neither of these are interesting, good character traits. So, like, you can go ahead and strike good character off of the list of possibilities for this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird that there's, like, maybe Anya just thinks people who talk about their butt are naturally dumb.
I think it's supposed to be like a judgy thing. Like, the fact that she's, like, young and promiscuous, like, she doesn't like that.
Right, and so she's just taking it out that way.
Yeah, so she's just insulting her.
Yeah, Anya, despite being a presence during the entirety of the game, gets no characterization.
Yeah, I actually, like, I don't remember if it was established or not that she's a person, but I assumed she was an AI assistant the whole game until you meet her at the end.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if the game was going for that, and then showing that she's a real person at the end was supposed to be like a little twist or revelation.
It isn't, because she is in the first level's end cutscene. It's easy to overlook.
She straight up came off like a robot or like an AI to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't even, like... Because she's in that first level, as you meet her in person when you get to the base.
Do you? I completely forgot about that.
But yeah, you don't actually... She doesn't say, like, here, take this earpiece, I'll be talking to you.
She's already been talking to you.
So yeah, you have no fucking idea, what her purpose even is. And the same goes for the commander, who gets introduced and goes like, we need our best men on this mission. And then you go, and then he shows back up at the end, is like, you brought me a robot. I was like, there isn't a through line with this character where that joke, like, is, like, set up and pay off. It's just, like, a dumb thing that he said.
Yeah.
So I guess there's one problem with the variety of levels approach, is that you can't really do setup and payoff. Like,
no.
You get one in this game with him saying that it's time to split and getting, like, criticized for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, like, it does have some good writing in it, like, good comedic writing anyway. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't feel like it's really concerned with, like, telling a good story or, like, doing, like, a long form setup and payoff from, like, the beginning to the end of the game kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it throws goofy things at the wall just as much, if not more, than they write actual jokes.
Yeah, and, like, the plot doesn't exactly take itself seriously either.
No. It's like a spoof of, like, a lot of different, like, action movies and things. Like that corny 80s action movie tone. Like, if they made a TimeSplitters movie, you'd cast, like, Nick Cage in it. Like, it would be self-aware.
Yeah. I feel like if you made a TimeSplitters movie, it would just be the movie Crank 2.
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison. But if they made it now, they would totally want to cast The Rock as Cortez.
Right. Honestly, he wouldn't be bad.
No.
It's not a bad cast, really.
All right, Nick Cage is Harry Tipper.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch that.
If you could pull Vin Diesel in from the Riddick movies, so not Vin Diesel, but John Riddick. I'm saying John because I don't know what his actual first name is. Just pull that character in as Cortez and be like, here's a script.
Yeah.
You're in a movie where we show it on a screen. Mm-hmm. That would be a good cast
hologram
as well.
Vin Diesel.
Yeah. But yeah, the actual plot of this game seems to be, to me anyway, that you give the bad guy the idea to do the evil thing.
Yeah, then you give him the means to do it. Right.
So that you can stop the thing that he has now done because you've done that.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a game that is called TimeSplitters and is about time travel and has lots of time travel based mechanics in it. There's one time travel based mechanic in it. And it doesn't give one fuck about the rules of time travel, and I personally love that.
Oh yeah, I think my favorite joke in the whole thing is how much they don't care. Like Cortez doesn't care at all. Like what's her name, Anya, that you just said it. Yeah, tells you the first time you run into a wormhole, like don't jump in it. You could like tear apart space time and stuff, and he just does, and just continues to do it casually and interacts with himself. And it's a gag in every level, and it's just treated really casually. And I found that to be surprisingly funny, just how much he just doesn't care about any of the implications of time travel.
Yep. And like the first of all, I don't know, this struck me. I say this all the time where I'm like, oh, you reused resources, that was smart and good, and I liked that you did that. This time it does feel bad, and I didn't like it because they do just play identical cutscenes at the beginning and end of those scenes, which I get, it's cute, but also like, why am I sitting through this multiple times?
I don't know. I thought that worked. Like, I thought that's part of like what made it funny. Is it just it's like you can tell the character's like excited to loop back around and to say the same things that he said to himself before. Like, I don't know. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I mean,
and they were always short.
True. Yeah, there was only a couple instances where it went on for more than like 1 minute.
Yeah,
so that's fair. I will say, we talked about Manny Calavera and how he differentiates himself from other, like, too cool video game protagonists. Like, how he is the above and beyond. Like, he's so cool in a goofy enough world that it just works.
Yeah, he's, like, actually cool and suave.
And I think that Cortez actually works as well because he aesthetically is set up to look like a Rock or a Vin Diesel. And they play it for laughs predominantly, and it makes the character kind of believable when he does really like eccentric wacky bullshit.
It's endearing.
Yeah, like he's not as bad as he could have been.
Yeah, he's a himbo.
He's a bit of a himbo. He's like a Dionysus.
No, no one's that good.
No one is that. Okay, he aspires to a Dionysus.
Okay, there we go.
He's a himbo that's silly.
He's not quite handsome enough.
Man, the confusion if the title of this episode is Himbo That's Silly and it's on TimeSplitters, people will be like, what the fuck were they talking about?
Harry Tipper is the better himbo. That's one of the conversations that goes on in that level, and where the bad guys are shooting at you.
That's the conversation that goes on in TimeSplitters Future Perfect web forums in 2006. Oh, okay. One other thing about the campaign, at least before we break and reconvene. There's a ton, not a Bayonetta level of this, but a ton of just like ancillary bullshit.
Yep, early 2000s Force Variety.
Yeah.
Play a sound effect.
Party popper goes off, chorus of children in the background going, yay! I kind of like that so much of it doesn't matter and just doesn't do anything. Like, there's a point in the game where you can drive a cat, like an RC car, but it doesn't, like, you don't have to do it, and it doesn't accomplish anything if you do it. It's just sort of there. Plus, you've got, like, the requisite driving missions. There's a slot machine. There's all kinds of, like, weird, Force Variety stuff in this game. And it plays into the challenges a bit, but it is just kind of a very strange decision to jam it all in here.
Yeah, it's just a very of-the-time kind of thing. We've talked about this on other episodes. You mentioned Bayonetta, but I feel like studios felt like they had to do stuff like this at the time, so they could put it on the back of the box, like 8 cool driving levels or whatever. But yeah, I feel like I hate did all the vehicle sections, as usual.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't like the part where you got in the giant robot and had to shoot at the ships, the gunner ships flying by.
Yeah.
With like the heat-seeking missiles. That part was really hard. But yeah, I like that kind of optional stuff though. It's like always fun. Like that's something that you used to get a lot more of in games when they didn't cost as much to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like one-off weird thing, that somebody probably put together and they were like, throw it in the game. So yeah, it's fun to see that kind of stuff, but
you definitely knows on this one. Because that was my takeaway also. Like, it seemed like they had just gotten the design of this game down so much, and they were
yeah, that's
like,
another thing is that it's a sequel, so you can do weird shit.
yeah. I know that at least the first game was actually developed by Eidos. So I don't know if the second one is or not, but
I don't think the first two were published by EA. So there's probably a difference there.
Regardless, like, there's definitely some, like, past experience here. And I think they just had the systems down and knew what they wanted to do.
And the code and all that.
And somebody was just like, what if we just made the cat drivable? And they were like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that would be funny.
Yeah, toss that in. But I agree, the driving levels were largely bad. Like, not just forgettable, but, like, actively bad. With a particular shout out to the one where you just walk around in a stupid robot shoot those planes. Not because it was like it killed you and made you do it a bunch of times. It was just they were really sparse.
Yeah.
And it just took a long time.
Getting like the last two was like very frustrating.
It just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I guess add that, like, the sniper missions, we're just talking, anytime they break away from that core GoldenEye-ass shoot a guy with a gun gameplay, then do the sniper missions and the driving missions, it just, and the pipe dream hacking minigame, all of that. I mean, I actually didn't mind the pipe dream so much, but, like...
Me neither, except for, like, the really hard ones.
Right. But like all that stuff is just worse than the core gameplay, and it's not that long.
No.
So they really could have just cut it, and it wouldn't have made that big of a difference. I don't know. Those are the ups and downs. Pros, feels like GoldenEye. Cons, gotta shoot those planes. Keep that neck warm.
Gonna come a storm,
man.
In order to keep our necks warm, but we'll keep both of our necks warm by getting a really long scarf, and we'll get that scarf on the break.
That one, saw where you're going. Got lost along the way.
I sure did, but
Welcome back. I did want to talk about... So, hold on. Did we think that we covered everything that we want to about the campaign? Because I feel like there's just a couple of things that we could touch on.
Some stragglers.
Yeah. Before we move on to the multiplayer, which is probably what most people actually remember this game for.
Yeah.
I want to talk about sort of bosses and how they were universally pretty boring, with one big exception that I'm a huge fan of. And that is Creature, is what it is called. It's the tank version of the main bad guy, where you shoot all of his like weapons off of him. Yeah. Like, in a first-person shooter, there's a place for big bullet spongy bosses. You'll note that in a lot of the more famous, popular FPSs, they aren't as much of a thing. Like, Half-Life doesn't have bosses, really, except for the end one. And Half-Life 2 also is pretty light on bosses. There are a few, like, big set-piece encounters, but there's not much else. Doom would be sort of the one that I point to as being an FPS that does have bosses that has been successful recently. Whereas a lot of the time, a boss in an FPS just kind of is an enemy that takes a lot of shots and normally doesn't engage that much. It's not really the genre's strengths. But there's a place for a boss that just takes a lot of bullets because, especially in classic FPSs, you have this, like, the arsenal, right? Ian Danskin, actually, Innuendo Studios, did a really good video about this last year, where you want an arsenal in an FPS that feels diverse and satisfying to use. And a lot of the time, you end up sort of finding, like, a niche or, like, a single weapon that you just keep coming back to. Like, it's the thing that you walk around with most of the time because it does a good job at regular enemies. And so a boss gives you an opportunity to really break out the big guns, right? Like the things that you don't use. Yeah, literally the biggest guns. The mini gun, the rocket launcher, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to spin this into the first topic that I have on multiplayer as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I like Creature because it is a really atypical boss that goes against a lot of the design that bosses usually have in games. I like that it is a big health pool, but it's a health pool that gets easier the longer the fight goes on because you're actually destroying the ways that it has to damage you. So you get to go in guns blazing and chop down a big, huge part of the fucking throw grenades at him, shoot rockets and whatever, have a good time. And then once you've sort of chipped off as much as you can just by blasting indiscriminately, you have to more surgically attack certain parts of it. And I think it's a really interesting design. It's just not something that you normally see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with your call out that that's the best one, like the main boss, one of his versions. But I think the thing about the other bosses that's bad is that they don't really feel like bosses. Like, they don't feel like they're designed to be boss encounters so much as they feel kind of jerry-rigged to just, like, be a big thing that you shoot. And they don't really feel like they have, like, a boss mechanic as much. Like the tank in the first level, it's just kind of like throw a grenade at it so it's stunned and then go up and put like C4 on it.
Yep.
It's not really like, they didn't really put, it seems like, development time into like making unique bosses.
Yeah. There's the one boss, which I want to shout out as being the worst boss, maybe of all time, that is just the guy in a jetpack.
Oh, yeah.
And he just kind of like bobs around wildly.
And you just spray him with bullets.
Yeah, it's like, it's hard to fail because he just has a gun like a regular enemy and just shoots at you. But because he's flying around so rapidly, he rarely hits you. And so the challenge is just, can you shoot him a bunch of times? Which...
before you take enough chip damage.
Yeah. And it's funny. Like, when you see somebody do it, it looks like something that I would make in fucking Game Builder Garage. Because it just seems like they put a random number generator on him and just let him go. Or like Gary's mod.
Yeah, that's a better comparison. The one boss I want to call out, and it's more of a mini boss, is the like the mutant zombie deer.
Yeah.
In the
deer haunter.
The deer haunter in the 90s haunted house level, because it's really aggressive. It like bursts out of the wall and is actually like intimidating in a way that is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Appropriate for the level.
Yeah. We didn't talk
Puts
about
pressure on you.
We didn't talk about many of the levels specifically, but that one definitely deserves to be talked about. One of the big problems that I have with this game, and I'm going to blame modern hardware here more than anything else, but it is hard to see a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think that is a lot to do with our TV, because I remember Metroid Prime, when we played that, it seeming really dark.
Yeah.
And I've watched a little bit of gameplay of this on YouTube, and I don't know if this had, like, if they were emulating it, but like it looked like way brighter on the capture footage that other people had. So
yeah, and I think that it is like a difference. Like in 2005, Thank God for that paper. In 2005, like, yes, flat screen TVs were a thing, but they weren't super common.
They weren't HD TVs.
Right. So you end up with kind of a weird middle ground era, and I think that this game was just sort of more developed for the time when, like, TVs had lots of, like, had gamma settings in them.
Yeah.
I tried turning the brightness up on our TV. It didn't do fucking anything.
Yeah, I think it's still at +5.
Mm-hmm.
I think I didn't turn it back down last time I changed it. You can't tell.
No, not at all. Yeah, so that's this is the world of 2021 playing PlayStation 2 games. But regardless of all of that, like, the level is dark, but it's that way for atmosphere. There are levels later in the game that are dark that just seem to serve no purpose. It just is dark.
Yeah, they're just to be moody, I guess.
Yeah, like, it is kind of atmospheric,
You're infiltrating
but it's not
the underground layer kind of thing.
It's just not as appropriate. Whereas in this level, it is a horror level. Like, the 90s level is very cool because it is a direct send-up of, like, tropes that are established in Resident Evil and in zombie movies and games at the time.
Like Doom 3.
Like Doom 3, which actually would love to see the release dates because they had to have been so close together.
Yep.
I feel like Doom 3 was like 2003. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you run in with a baseball bat, and, like, there's zombies, and you have to kill them by hitting them in the head. There's, like, sandworms out of nowhere.
Yeah, in that one part, unless I missed something, yeah.
Yeah, it's really limited. There's just one instance of that.
Yeah, to introduce the flamethrower.
And then ghosts and zombie mutants and things, and there's, like, a cool... there's a cool room and a very cruel room where you can, like, access this computer terminal to fuck with a zombie. Like, it's implied that they're doing experiments on the zombie. And you can activate some very classic N64 cheat codes, like big head mode on him and stuff, and it changes, like, it just fucks with his character model, and you can look at it, and it's funny. But then, like, one room over, there's one where there's just a live human scientist in it, and you can do the same thing to him.
Yep.
Which feels very Duke Nukem 3D to me. But yeah, it's a cool level because it has a lot in it that are all very tightly themed. And I think it works better than nearly anything else.
Yeah, I think the levels in this are at their best when they're the most creative, and that level certainly was. Yeah, like that one, the train part of the 60s level and the future level, or like the one with the RoboCop guys, 2050, whatever. We're all, like, I think those are all right in a row, almost. And those are, like, my three favorites, I think.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, like... towards the end, it gets a little bit more just like enemy base sort of territory.
I do want to jump in to just quickly criticize the fact that the bad guy in this game constantly builds underground bases. Like every
it's
single one.
It's like a joke, like lots of other things. Yeah,
it's just like because like the first, like the one in the mansion makes sense because it is a parody of Resident Evil, which had a weird science base in the basement. So they just kind of did that again in this. And then they're like the one that's set in the ocean, and they're like, we built a base underneath of the island.
That's like it's so James Bond. Like the enemy base is always underground.
Which is why next time on No Clue Pocket we're talking about Welcome to My Underground Lair.
Exactly. It's right there in the title.
Yep.
For all you listening, that's Game Boy game developed by Rockstar. They licensed Austin Powers tie-in game that is just bizarre.
It's extremely... Do look it up. I won't promise that we won't cover it, but you will wish that I could promise that.
Its existence is funny to me every time that I remember it exists.
And the fact that I just have a physical copy of it. I don't know when or where I got it. But yeah. I do want to move on to talk about the multiplayer. But in order to do that thoroughly, I want to talk about this game's arsenal, as I was mentioning. Because, to me, there's a really direct comparison to Goldeneye here, where the style of gun and the, like, variety of guns is really similar. And that is to say, actually not as expansive as I would have liked. It's the kind of game that really thrives on its, like, wackiness. And when I think back to my days playing Perfect Dark, there's a disgusting variety of weapons to choose from in that game. In a really entertaining way where they threw game balance out the window. Because there's so much customization in these arcade modes that it didn't really matter. You could set the games up in a balanced way if you wanted to, or you could set up the Golden Magnum situation where everyone just starts with a gun that kills in one hit, and you just go like, who can shoot you in the foot the best? And that is a huge part, I think, of what made these games such a mainstay of, like, living room casual split screen
LAN parties, etc.
Yeah. And, like, because we went through this and you saw me trying to, like, make custom weapon loadouts that were, like, that worked.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like, I feel like you can do it if you just fill it with, like, a bunch of guns that shoot bullets and grenades. And that's not the interesting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want the thing... Like, this game has a weapon called the Injector that when you shoot somebody with it... actually didn't test this, and I should have before we came in here. If you shoot someone with it several times, they explode. It's like it's like the Needler from
Halo,
but without homing bullets.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a similar weapon in Perfect Dark, and I'm going to keep coming back to Perfect Dark because as far as this genre goes, Perfect Dark is the flawless execution of multiplayer.
You mean perfect?
It's perfect. I wanted to avoid saying it more than once in a sentence. But Perfect Dark's multiplayer is perfect. It is... it has the same limitations as Goldeneye did.
Uh-huh. And is it less dark than this game?
At times, no. So maybe not perfect, but
okay,
very nearly so. It is the same level of customization, if not more, and the weapons were really fucking goofy, and there's a weapon like this that is a gun that looks really weird. It looks kind of like a stapler. Not like a staple gun, but like just a regular stapler.
Mm-hmm.
And you shoot little tabs at people, and eventually they'll die. But if you can walk directly up to somebody and just and hit them with it,
touch range,
yeah, it kills them instantly.
Nice.
And I loved that. Like, that's such a good mechanic. And then it also had like the laptop gun. This is the Perfect Dark podcast.
Uh-huh.
The laptop gun is great because it's like an SMG, but then its alternate fire turned it into a turret, and you threw it, and the turret would just sit there and shoot at people. It had the, in retrospect, very poorly named N-bomb, which you could throw, and it made people drop all their weapons, and they became drunk if they stepped into the cloud.
Mm.
It's good shit. And proximity pinball on the grenades was such a good decision. All of this shit is so wacky and wild and wet. and American summer. And hot. And this game just feels like everything is very narrow.
Yeah, I think the thing is that there's too many kind of guns of the same type.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of guns, but yeah, like, when I noticed when you were making loadouts, you wanted like a variety, and there were like too many guns for like 2 or 3 different spots, and then like the coverage for like other weird stuff wasn't as strong. So yeah, it's a little bit more like narrowed in on like efficiency, I guess, to like the detriment of that kind of wacky, interesting loadout potential.
Yeah. And like part of it is do we think that it is the time travel element that causes some of these problems? Because you have like a Luger and a more modern handgun and the sci-fi handgun that are all essentially the same gun.
I'd say yes and no, because like they need equivalent kind of guns in each time period,
Mm-hmm.
which adds to that, like there being guns that fill the same roles. But also, that should open up even more possibilities, though, theoretically, to have like crazy, weird future weapons. Go like Ratchet and Clank with it.
Right.
But I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know. It's like it sits in a weird spot, I think, as far as like game balance goes, like how you balance the needs of the campaign with the needs of the few. Now, with the needs of the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Though that's the needs of the many.
Yes.
The campaign would be the needs of the few.
Well, that's a good point too, because like in the single player, you want to have a gun. You want to have the same sort of like weapon
you want
balance.
your handgun, you want your machine gun, your shotgun, etc.
Right. Which there are. I mean, games generally have struggled to have like a variety of shotguns because it is a very like narrow sort of
Very specific thing.
Yeah. Like I remember playing Counter-Strike Source back in the day, and it's like you open the like pistol or the SMG menu and there's like 10 options. And like Counter-Strike is a very like statistics based game where it's like this gun is accurate at this range and deals whatever damage, etc. And then like the shotgun tab has 2 options. You get the M3, you get the auto, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So like shotguns, obviously, I don't expect a lot of variety, but you have to have like some progression for the player to hit when going through campaign levels. And then when you're making your multiplayer, you don't want to like leave a weapon. Like you did the work of programming that weapon.
Include them all, yeah.
Yeah, so you end up with this game that takes place over 6 distinct time periods. And so you have 6 versions of a submachine gun, and you're like, oh, okay, well, all right. Just, I guess we'll keep them all in. So it does feel a little repetitive in the arsenal, and it makes me a little sad because I feel like there's such there's so much potential. Yeah. And this
where's that TimeSplitters 4?
Exactly. Well, it makes me think about in TimeSplitters 1, because the strongest memory I have of TimeSplitters 1 was on one of those challenges, which was to break a bunch of windows in a time limit. And in order to do it, the weapon they give you, which was available in the multiplayer, is a brick. It's just a fucking rock that you throw at people. Mm-hmm. And, like, where's the brick? Like,
Hashtag bring back bricks.
Hashtag bricks back. I don't know if any of these are good.
Yeah, bring back bricks is good alliteration.
It's like a tongue twister. It's like a tongue splitter.
Tongue splitters too.
Bring back bricks.
Brick perfect.
The black bug bled blue blood.
Anyway, stop. What were we talking about?
Guns in the multiplayer.
Right.
And how I was unable to find a wacky thing to put
in.
The
bricks in the TimeSplitters 1, strongest memory.
Yeah.
Etc.
Well, I'm just saying that the bricks would have been a solid addition to this.
Yeah, you only have the baseball bat. Like, a couple more, like, melee weapons would have been fun. Mm-hmm. Or, like a brick or, like, a baseball. Like a non... or a not as lethal, like, projectile weapon that's not a gun.
Yeah. Because the guns pretty much, without exception, are hit scan or very fast projectiles.
Yeah, and then you do have your weird one-off things like the flamethrower or like the electric pulse gun, like a harpoon gun and stuff.
And that's another thing. Because like the harpoon gun, I don't even know why the harpoon gun is the thing I'm honing in on here. The harpoon gun has like brethren in the FPS community.
Yeah, it feels like it's mainly just designed for the level it's in.
Yeah. It's like a weapon that's supposed to specialize in headshots, like a crossbow or something would in another game. Mm-hmm. And this game is obviously impossible to do that with, for the most part, at least with our control setup. So, but like, yeah, there's a stat system to the characters in this game, which I like. I like that they included that. To differentiate, because as the loading screen tells you, it's 150 plus playable characters, and the fact that they all have different stat loadouts means that there's like a meaningful difference between one character and the other.
Mm-hmm.
They have the option to turn this off, which I did after a couple of games, but it is like a little bit of depth, like something that you can choose. And it helps balance sort of the odd job problem, where if you play as the character who's really short, then you're harder to hit by everybody else.
Yeah, I felt like the monkey is that in this game, and he seemed like he was much harder to kill.
Yeah. The monkey is absolutely the odd job of the game. There's also a robot with a fish on his head named RoboFish.
Of course.
Yeah. Who's also pretty short as well and has a similar problem. And then you also have characters that are like huge and are easy to hit, or have giant heads like Handyman, which makes headshots a lot easier to land.
Yeah, this stood out to me as well when we first started, when we first booted up the multiplayer, was how different the sizes were between all the characters. I'm like, if a game now would try and make all of the characters have the same hitboxes, and like would not have these characters that are like so much different in size.
Yeah, it's like a weird difference between, like, in some games, you want a character with a big hitbox if they are mechanically totally different than a character with a
like
small
Team
hitbox.
Fortress or something.
Yeah. And then you look at something like this, and it's like you have the option to turn it off, like the character abilities, but even with them on, just being a guy with a giant head isn't helpful ever.
I mean, you're probably more knowledgeable on this than me, but like I didn't notice them at all, like a difference from when we had them on and you turned them off.
Oh yeah, I couldn't either.
It felt very Mario Kart, where like there's a stat screen and it says that the characters have different stats, but like for the most part you can't tell.
Which glider you choosing this time around?
The Wario wing, always.
Is it because it looks like a nose and mustache?
Exactly.
Yeah, it is really good.
Yep. The Hyrule kite is also cool when they added that. But
the Wario wing of TimeSplitters Future Perfect is Calamari.
Oh yeah, he's the thing that I remember about this game. Playing it at Dan's house. I said this at the end of the last episode. This was, in my head, that shooter where you can play as a squid and a gingerbread man. Yep. I always thought that was very cool and funny as like an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of interesting
and I still love calamari's. My main.
Yeah, and that's, yeah. Oh, the thing I was going to say, the tie together, we jumped into the characters, we can continue going with it. But the character stats include things like fireproof and shockproof, which determines how much damage that you take from the flamethrower and the electrode tool. So even the one thing about some of the wackier weapons that made them interesting, as in they have elemental damage that actually does damage differently than bullets do, has a stat associated with it, but most people playing the game are probably just going to turn that off. And that, it just kind of bums me out, I guess. Like, I wish that they'd either gone harder into making it... Well, what I really wish is that they went harder into making it wacky. Like,
yeah, it's like a Smash Brothers situation. Like, if it were a worse game, you would really want the game to like lean into the items and stuff. But since it's very tight mechanically, people like to turn those off and take it seriously. This sits like in the middle where like you want it to lean one way or the other.
Yeah. And like multiplayer obviously was something that the game was going to sell on, because that's what these games lived for back in the day. That's why they bothered programming bots and stuff, like things that are mostly left out of modern shooters because of the accessibility of the internet. We can now, like, in 2000, you would boot up a game and be like, oh yeah, I played a really intense game of a multiplayer shooter with me versus Andy, and we went back and forth and won some, lost some. But there are 10 other AI people in the background,
right,
that are essentially
who would win 1/3 of the time.
Don't tell them that. Yeah, no, they slaughtered us, at least the first couple of games.
Yep.
But yeah, like that is just like it's an element of the game, and I wish I think that this game's mechanics are not strong enough to support the go harder on balance option.
Yeah.
I think that you've nailed it.
Yeah, you want to lean the wacky items direction.
Yeah. There's a character in this game called the Shoal who is a whale and then 11 other fish.
Yeah, just swimming around him. Like, in my headcanon is that he's a psychic whale and he like levitates the fish around him.
That's probably that's as good as explanation.
But yeah, like
as any.
I fucking loved that though. Like, I thought I had seen the weirdest that this game had to offer, and then there's Shoal.
Yep. It's so wild, and they obviously leaned into it with the tone and the story of the plot, and all of the campaign is very wacky, and
it makes you wish more of those characters were in it.
Oh yeah, the fucking well, I don't know, all of them. I was trying to think of like a single thing.
Like, it starts out with more like regular human characters, but like once you hit like 20, it's all weird shit after that.
Yep. I remember, because like there are several of them that you don't really get a look at when you're playing the game, because they're like the zombies and the mutants in the 90s level are like, it's dark. There's a lot
low
of them.
res.
It's low res. You're trying to run through and survive, and so you shoot them all, and you don't really get to look at the character models. And so you get this like big list of like these models that were used in the game that are really interesting, and then you get the wild shit, and you gotta love the wild shit. Like, yeah, like I mentioned, Handyman is like a robot with a big is like Glover on his head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's weird, but like I like that it's there.
Oh yeah. Like, it would have been really fun to be on the character design team.
Because they did seem like they were just putting a checkbox.
Oh, yeah. It seems like the first 150 submissions make it in.
Mm-hmm. And then the boring corporate guys made like 8 different versions of Cortez.
Right,
like,
yeah.
Sure, whatever. We'll put it
We
in.
need all the ones for the campaign, but then after that...
Just whatever you want.
Whatever. 85 blank slots.
I wonder if I'm just not remembering and that some of these characters were in previous games.
I think they were. And I was going to bring this up way earlier, but I think that's how they're able to have so many, is they were already in previous games, like a handful of them. Because I'm pretty sure the one that I remember playing is TimeSplitters 2, and that had Calamari and the Gingerbread Man in it. Because, yeah, there's no way I would have played that one as a kid if it came out in 2005. Like, I would have been, like, 12, 13 then. And I remember, like, being, like, 9.
That's true. Yeah, that's actually what I want to find out right now is when did the original TimeSplitters and TimeSplitters 2 come out? Because, like...
Yeah, maybe it was even the first one that I remember. I'm not sure.
Yeah. The first game was published by Eidos, developed by Free Radical, and came out in 2000. It has like a weird parenthetical that says 2000, 2002, but 2000 is its initial release. So there was only 5 years between all 3 of these games.
Okay, yeah, so it was probably the first one that I remember.
But yeah, it is a weird thing. This game has more content than you would ever expect, at least nowadays. Like, I wouldn't expect the amount of shit that's in this game to exist.
I was kind of impressed by some aspects of it.
It's like you forget that this is kind of like what games were back in the day.
Yeah, like it's the tone, to circle back around to that. I remember booting it up and being like, oh man, like this is so like 2002 or whatever.
Yeah.
But like games were just like this for a little while. Like there's like this period of like video games adolescence where they were like these growing pains of like some games wanted to be taken more seriously and be more cinematic, and other games seemed like they knuckled down on being like juvenile and weird. And this is kind of one of those games that just really revels in being goofy.
Which timeline did we go down? Let us know in the comments below.
Because, yeah, like, not all games, but a lot more games were like this, and you don't really see stuff with this kind of tone anymore.
Yeah. Especially not the kind of thing that releases and just says, like, we just did everything that we could with the engine we had, and that's the game. Like, the extras menu, like, the challenges modes, things that are, like, just an exploration of what you can do with the mechanics. Like, it does still happen, but it isn't common, and it's something I do kind of miss, even though they largely don't add much substantive to the game.
Yeah, we've talked about this kind of stuff before, and I think this would have definitely counted as like a AAA release when it came out, but this feels like a AA game, like by today's standards, and like because games are so expensive to make now, you don't really get those anymore, and I think that's definitely like had a negative impact on the industry. Like outside of indie games, you don't really get very many weird experimental or goofy or weird games that are like widely marketed and are popular like you used to. So like things that are a little bit more like homogenous now.
Yeah, there's like an expected set of things that you have in your game, and anything else is just mostly cut at this point. We talked about Smash Brothers earlier, and it's not a terrible comparison, because Smash Brothers is a game that I was surprised that in the most recent iteration has 70 plus characters. And it even cut like a lot of the features that were in the older games that were more in TimeSplitters sort of like zone. Like we lost
break the targets
and board the platforms and everything.
Subspace.
Yeah, all the adventure modes.
We didn't have the home run contest until like one of the later updates.
Stage Builder also got added.
Stage Builder, yeah.
And this game, out of the box, is a campaign, a multiplayer mode, with a bunch of different options. It's not complicated, but it does allow for a lot of sort of variety. The challenge mode, it has a map builder in it, online functionality where you can share those maps. I'm sure that you can't now, but it was there at the time. It's just, I don't know, it's wild.
Yeah, it came out before DLC and patching.
True.
You had to make a more complete product back then. Like I was thinking about this once again. Take a drink, all you listeners. I was thinking about Kingdom Hearts. I was thinking about the difference between like KH2 and KH3, whereas like 2 feels like it has so much extra stuff in it. Well, one, because it came out at the end of the PS2's life, and Square had made a bunch of games for the PS2, and they had the code base and et cetera, et cetera. It was a sequel. And so it just came like packed with all this stuff, like extra stuff, like you had like the things like the Tron level and like the Timeless River stuff, in addition to like as many worlds as there were in the first game. Like it just felt like it went above and beyond and packed in as much as it could. And like it had a weird skateboarding mini game, which is really weird. It had all this stuff in it, and it's like
I remember that.
Yeah, it's like I think it's something. It's a combination of the fact that it was a sequel, so it could be iterative, but also like I was saying, like games were cheaper to make back then, so like doing all that kind of stuff now would cost a lot more. And like that's one of the ways I think like KH3 was lacking, is it felt like kind of bare bones as far as like all the stuff that got included.
Yeah, and I'm not like a big like DLC hater. Like we cut stuff out of the launch day release so you could sell it back to us for $10. Yeah, greedy devs. But it is like, because realistically the challenges are not a real thing. They're there and you can do them, and they have like an arcadey high score thing to them, but most of them are not that fun in comparison to just like the main gameplay, and they're there if you have this game and nothing else. And just need to milk more time out of it.
That was more common back then.
Yeah. And, you know, fuck it. Like, I support the existence of it. I think it's very cool, and I would love to see more people do more experimental things with the game that they produce. I talked dismissively about it on Resident Evil 7, but, like, even that, like, I'm amused.
The
punching,
crocodile punching.
Yeah, like the end of Zoe is like is a wild inclusion of something that they put together and threw out there, and it's in the same engine, it's in the same universe, but it sure doesn't feel like the same game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have an appreciation for this, even though I don't mourn its loss. It's like a very interesting novelty that was very prevalent in this 2000-2005 era.
It's just one of those things that it feels like more people should be aware of or remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't want to forget that history, because it could result in newer games doing interesting stuff if they look back for inspiration. So,
a vision. Do we have future thoughts?
Okay, my future thoughts are, this game was mechanically very standard to me. I booted it up, and once we got the settings ironed out for our setup, it felt very like first-person shooter to me. As somebody who doesn't have a ton of experience with them, it still felt very familiar. But the strengths of this, I think, are in its tone. It skews a little bit more juvenile and goofy than I'd like. I still like a lot of that stuff, but I think it goes a little too hard on it for my taste. But it does have an undeniable charm. It is funny in parts. I like how it was like a AAA release in its time, and it's this goofy, and like there's just something endearing about that. At least in a small dose. If you had more stuff like this, like, you know, if it got oversaturated, it probably wouldn't be so likable. But as like a novelty as it is to me, like it made me like it a lot more than I probably would have otherwise. Yeah, its biggest strengths, I think, are in its variety. All of the 150 characters, at least to me, who doesn't play as many games like this, I thought the weapon variety was pretty good. Yeah, and the level variety, jumping through time, is fun. I liked how like lighthearted it took the time travel. Like a lot of the tongue-in-cheek stuff about it was actually pretty funny. Like some of the more well thought out like parody of like the action genre and like the James Bond kind of stuff, I thought worked. But it does. It's a 2005 game, and it has 2005 jank playing it now. So it doesn't hold up super well, but it does hold up better than I expected it to. Coming to this, I thought it might be kind of a train wreck to play through this, but it doesn't. The train level is actually one of the best ones. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up. I don't have particularly nuanced thoughts on shooters, so a lot of my stuff goes more towards like the presentation and the tone and stuff, and I found it to be entertaining.
Yeah.
So that's my future thoughts.
Man, no, I don't think ever before has there been a more correct just reiteration of what I was thinking on Final Thoughts. Yeah, this game, first of all, don't play this game on modern hardware if you can avoid it. It's very weird the amount of like additional jank that it introduces, like on top of it being a PS2 shooter. But from my experience, both playing this game as a kid and only remembering the multiplayer, like I did finish the game and I remember playing some of these challenges, but like the majority of my memory comes from just playing it with other people sitting next to me with controllers on the GameCube, which is where I originally had this game. It is a fun time, like in a way that a game was designed to be a fun time in 2005. The single player is not too hard, not too easy, has a hard mode, has an easy mode if you find that my statement is a lie and want to change it. But it's pretty straightforward. Like this is a post Headshots Matter FPS console game. So heavy aim assist. You said a variety of weapons, and I do agree. The arsenal is actually pretty high in terms of like sheer number of things, but it falls down, I think, a little bit in the multiplayer is the only part. But and this is our audience engagement, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
To my eyes, I don't remember another FPS game that I would rather play in the couch co-op situation than TimeSplitters. Like, especially 2 and Future Perfect. Because, like, after Perfect Dark, after GoldenEye, in the post-perfect... I hear this plosives. Yeah.
We need to get you a new pop screen.
That's just especially when we're talking about Perfect Dark.
Yeah, the post-retro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the at the time or modern
Rareware. I always do that.
Oh,
because they're both our names.
Yeah, in the post-Rare era of FPS games, like TimeSplitters really filled that niche pretty well, and I think that's what a lot of people remember it for, and I wouldn't blame them for it. Like, it is still exactly what you expect from it. I was surprised by the campaign as well. It was a lot more fun than I thought. The writing holds up better than I thought. I imagined that the writing was going to not hold up in any way, and it held up somewhat, which is stellar.
An achievement.
Yeah, for 2005, for video games, the fact that the game is still a little bit funny and has charming characters and is only slightly racist occasionally.
And a little bit sexist.
Yeah, and well, it's pretty sexist, but like that's just every video game from 2005.
Mm-hmm.
All of that combined, though, like I think it evens out to hold up better than I ever would have imagined it would, and that's a thumbs up. I think I enjoyed my time with this, as incomplete as it was, given our 18.7% completion rate.
Yeah. Apparently, yeah, doing the campaign gives you like 15% completion.
Mm-hmm. You play 10 multiplayer matches and it's like 18%, I guess. All
right, I guess our consensus is TimeSplitters, Future, pretty good.
Pretty good. The FPG.
Mm-hmm.
TSFPG.
There you go.
Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.
Hell yeah, finally. I can talk about this game with somebody.
Yeah, this has been a long one, and I have been playing it since May. So,
really? I guess you started it and then stopped.
For a little while.
Yeah, okay.
I mostly played it in June. But we will be getting to it in August? No, it'll be end of July.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know why I'm the one fucking talking about it. It's a Monolith Soft RPG.
Yeah, it came out on the Wii. It was like very late on the Wii, and it was part of this there was this petition to Nintendo. It was I think it was called Project Rainfall or something weird like that. There were these 3 RPGs coming out in Japan only, and there was like a petition to localize them because there's like no RPGs on the Wii. And it ended up working, and it got localized for Europe, and then they just gave us the European localization, which is why the voices are European voice actors. But
which is great. I love that
it gives it a unique flavor.
Yeah,
but
it is such like a characterizing thing.
Not to get
series.
into it too much, but yeah, it's a really ambitious. It blows my mind that like they made this for the Wii. It's like it's a huge game, and it's got a lot going on, and it's very interesting, and it's I think very underappreciated. Even though like it seems like Nintendo actually promotes them pretty hard, they've never really caught on. They're like somewhat popular, but like I think they deserve more. But anyway, we'll get into that on the Xenoblade episode.
Until that time, though, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our Discord server, to the YouTube channel where you can find all of our old episodes, including episodes on Halo Combat Evolved. That one featured former co-host and all-around great dude JJ Artemis. And we don't do shooters very much, huh?
Early on, I didn't want to do them because I felt like I wouldn't have anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that stigma just stuck because I'm way more open to them now, but we just don't do them now. We just don't think about it.
Yeah. This episode...
We talked about Call of Duty.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Warfare.
This episode was brought to you by Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Also former guest host, who I know loves the Call of Duty episode for whatever reason. So...
I guess probably because we're not the kind of people you think would talk about Call of Duty.
That's probably true, yeah. But there it is.
There it is.
There's the episode. Fucking time to hit that like button.
Jump through the wormhole a few times so you can click the like and subscribe and ring the bell all at the same time.
It's a dual lock password screen, Cortez. Jump back through the portal. And
this time you have to write in the comments section.
And also play Pipe Dream. And now, No Clip Mystery Theater presents Andy is bitten by a vampire, and it takes effect during a podcast.
But first, if you...